In today's deep dive, we talk about how Trump's tariffs can change the landscape of sports. Before we take the deep dive, our quick five. Number one, damn the torpedo bats. Two, why do female NCAA athletes delay going pro? Three, the NFL is considering some major changes for next season. Four, it's time to move on from Stephen A. Smith. Five, the Dodgers visit the White House. I'm Jason Kander. I'm joined by Adisu Demisi. Welcome back to The Game Within, where we talk about the business and politics of sports and how each shapes what happens on the field. First in our quick five, multiple teams have unveiled torpedo bats this season, and the stats are insane. I'm going to just go through this. Adisu, I know you're in New York City right now, where these torpedoes were,
made their debut.
Yeah, made their debut. So you grew up a fan of, who was your baseball team growing up?
Braves, baby. Still a Braves fan. The last remnants of my Atlanta roots.
Okay, all right. I thought maybe it was just because they were on TBS all the time growing up, that a lot of people became fans that way.
Yeah, that's fair.
But okay, so the Yankees made home run history, which it's hard for me to even say those words because as a Royals fan, but during their season opening homestand, tying an AL or NL record with 15 home runs in their first 3 games of a season and tying a club mark with 13 home runs in 2 games. Now we have, is there a Carl Ravitch clip here, Philip? Is that what it is? Or something else? We'll wait a moment to see. Yes, a clip. Well, shall we play it? Let's see.
We shall.
They're not pissed off because, look, the Yankees dealt with cold weather, and then all of a sudden they dealt with better pitchers, and the balls weren't flying. Although I think our guy Bregman hit a torpedo that home run today. Like, it makes a lot of sense. And golf has done this forever. If you could increase the size of the face of a golf club and allow you to miss the sweet spot, but technically be in the sweet spot, that's what that bat is. That's keeping you into the sweet spot for a lot longer. So hit one off that label, and there's just a lot more meat on the bone.
That's what PXG's doing.
Hell yeah.
Exactly.
Smart.
First of all, Carl Ravitch appears to be like at his beach house or something. Good for him.
He does seem to be living his best life there.
Things seem to be going fine for Carl Ravitch. I just want to start here, but we'll go back into the sort of details of this by, what I think is really amazing is the game of baseball has been around since Civil War times, and we're still figuring out new stuff. And by the way, it's played every day by 30 plus major league teams, hundreds of minor league teams, college teams, high school teams, little league teams, and we're figuring out new stuff after all this time.
Not even just new stuff about the fundamental piece of equipment. I guess the ball is more fundamental, but like the second most fundamental piece of equipment that goes into the game, which is the bat.
Really, equally. Right? I mean, there was no version of the game that didn't involve a bat, I don't think.
Yeah,
so it is one of 2 originating pieces of equipment in the game before the gloves, by the way.
The gloves were like, sure, I can catch a fly. I mean, no one wants to catch a fly ball with their bare hands or a grounder to second, but like it can be done. But you cannot play baseball. Yeah.
Originally, there were no gloves.
And for the listeners who aren't watching too, I didn't realize this until I started digging into it before this. The actual architecture of the torpedo bat, it's like a bowling pin basically, right? So it's a little fatter at the sweet spot, but it's not like it's a monumental difference. Like I was expecting that when I first heard about it, I was like, oh God, is this like pseudo corking or something about the weight or whatever? It's like literally just a slightly different shape of the bat, as Carl Ravitch was talking about, that makes the sweet spot a little bit bigger. And it's like, they couldn't think of that in 170 years. Like it took us 170 years to get to that. But what do you think, Jason? I mean, do you think it's good for the game? Do you think it's important? Do you think it's relevant?
I think it is vital for the game. And first of all, I've already, as you know, I play amateur wood bat baseball. I already have in my cart, so to speak, several torpedo bats, like ready to go. I'm excited about them. Don't know. I'm getting, once I recover from this surgery fully and can swing a bat, I'm going to buy one of these damn things. It's not a huge difference. I mean, sometimes when you're watching a game, for those who are less familiar, when you're watching a game, sometimes you'll hear the announcer say, "Oh, he hit that off the end of the bat." There's a lot of good thick barrel at the end of the bat, but if you think about it, it's like with a cue stick, right? Like if you were to swing a cue stick, like a cue for pool backwards, you have the big meaty end at the end, but if you hit it just off the end, you're not going to get much on it, right? So all this does is it says, look, most guys, they're more likely to hit it a little closer to the logo, a little closer to the handle. And so instead of having that be, getting jammed or be a weak, a broken bat sort of situation, they're like, let's just move a little of the meat of the bat that direction. And guys are way more likely to hit the sweet spot. The other thing is that if you think about, swinging a bat when all the weight is at the end, it's harder to swing it. So if you move that weight a little, like just a touch closer to the hands, you can swing a heavier bat the same speed that you were swinging a lighter bat, which means now you're bringing more mass to the ball. So still,
I should have paid more attention in high school physics, by the way. But yeah, that seems to make sense.
I still think at the end of the day, as one guy said, it's the magician, not the wand, or as they said in Top Gun Maverick, it's the pilot, not the plane. But on the margins, it can definitely make a difference.
Plane helps. Yeah, easier to fly a plane than a car.
Yes, exactly. You've got 18 players from 10 teams have been using them. Orioles, Cubs, Reds, Twins, Mets, Yankees, Phillies, Pirates, Rays, and Blue Jays. Now, you asked me, do I think it's good for baseball? Before either of us answer that, because we both should, let's look at some of the backlash to it. So the Brewers pitcher Trevor McGill said he feels that the Torpedo bats are terrible. He says they feel like something used in slow pitch softball. Red Sox slugger Tristan Casas says he has zero curiosity about using the new bats. Okay, now, however, let's listen to this clip. Who we seem to listen to him frequently on either this show or Majority 54. Let's listen to what Dave Portnoy said on Fox News about Torpedo bats.
They altered the bat. Stuart, you're a soccer guy. What if you have a player of yours who stinks, and every time he kicks it, it's a muffin, right? No speed, no nothing. You develop a cleat, a shoe that has turbo boosters in it. Does that mean he's better? Do you want to keep the game sacred? So this has nothing to do with the Yankees, but we don't need these Godzilla bats infiltrating the national pastime.
Okay, well, you go first. What do you think?
Yeah. I think, first of all, anything that I've said this on previous episodes, anything that makes baseball more interesting, I think is generally a good thing. It's losing market share. It's losing the eyeballs of younger people. More home runs should help. This feels like a non-steroidal way to do it, so I'm for it. I think Portnoy, it's a bad analogy. Like the Carl Ravitch analogy is way better. It's a golf club. It's just, and the equipment, when the equipment gets better, players can hit it further, and that's fine. But ultimately, this is a shape of a bat issue. Again, it's not a material of the bat. It's literally the shape of the bat is different. And there's no a record held by a shape of a bat, somebody hitting more home runs because they hit the shape of the bat is a record. Just like Tiger Woods hitting it longer than Jack Nicklaus is both probably due to the pilot plane thing, but also due to the fact that he had better equipment. So I think it's good for the game. I think Portnoy is wrong. I get purists, and you can wax way more poetic about this than I can about sort of the general feeling of nostalgia amongst a lot of baseball fans. But this is not a time for nostalgia, and this is cool. I paid attention to baseball in the first week of the season for the first time in a while, largely because of this. The Braves, by the way, I think have ordered their first shipment of Torpedo bats. I'm get one in Acuna's hands as fast as possible. Let's see him hit, 50-50 season like Ohtani. I'm here for it.
Baseball purists crack me up because, okay, first of all, it's like people like to make it their whole personality. And one of my favorite baseball purist things is that when teams started really employing the shift 20 years ago really heavily, a lot of baseball purists were like, that is bullshit. That's not what it's supposed to look like. When you look out at the field, the shortstop and the third baseman are supposed to be on the left side, and the second baseman and the first baseman are supposed to be on the right side. And this isn't baseball. And then the shift was so effective that Theo Epstein worked with Major League Baseball and figured out, hey, if we minimize the shift and we require that there be two infielders just barely on each side of second base, then we're going to get a much more exciting game, and we're going to get, more base hits and that kind of thing. And the same people who 20 years earlier were like, these teams that are doing the shift, this is not baseball. We're like, it is wrong to put in a rule like this because baseball doesn't need a rule like this. You got to just learn to hit the ball the other way. And it's like, what is your loyalty to in terms of purity? So my attitude is, yes, if you want, as I do, baseball to survive, and if you want baseball to not become golf and not become tennis, which is to say, not become a game that in the United States is played nearly exclusively by wealthy, mostly white families, because the game is getting so expensive to play, and the equipment is getting so expensive, and the opportunity to play at a high level is getting so expensive. And by the way, it's becoming like gymnastics, where you've got to move to certain parts of the country to train. If we want to do anything at all to try and make it so that everybody can play this game, then we have to make it exciting and fun so more people want to play the game. And having a situation like we have right now, where the pitchers are super dominant because they have innovated a million different ways to spin a baseball, a million different ways to throw the baseball harder and harder and harder, then yes, I am in favor of giving the offensive side of the game as much opportunity to do better as possible. And so good for this dude. I can't remember his name. The coach from the Yankees, who's now moved on, is I think with the Marlins, who is an MIT grad and a former Michigan physics professor, who's now a baseball coach. Anyway, I think it's awesome, and I'm all for it. So, all right. Next story here. Let me go up. All right. So with March Madness behind us, more female NCAA players are set to return to college next year than are men. It is funny. Like, when was the last time we even wondered aloud about whether a men's college basketball player was going to return or go pro? I'm trying to remember the last big one.
I don't.
It still happens in football.
Yeah, football, I was going to say it happens a lot, actually, but I can't remember. I mean, there's buzz about Cooper Flagg now just because Duke lost, but I think that's just wishful thinking. Like, he's going first in the draft. But he's very young, right? He just turned 18 during the season. So it would, I suppose, make sense. Anyway, point is, it hasn't happened in a long time.
All right, so we got these major stars in women's college basketball returning. You got national champion UConn guard Ozzie Fudd, who took over the championship game. Some of these, I'll be honest, I didn't follow it much this year, so I'm going to mess up these names. You can
Flage, Johnson.
You go through them.
Yeah, I followed Olivia Miles, who I think I saw on the way to my computer that she's transferring to TCU from Notre Dame, but she was projected to be the number 2 pick behind Paige Beckers in the draft. She's staying.
She was like, obviously. I'm choosing Texas Christian University over the pros. And Lauren Betts, who I think she might still not qualify by age, but she was dominant center for UCLA, who was number 1 in the country for most of the year. So it is the best of the best players, basically, except for Beckers, staying in school and doing so even in the case of Flage and others who are eligible to enter the draft. And I think it's important to note for listeners that unlike the NBA, where players, the rule is now you have to be 1 year removed from high school. So for example, like Cooper Flagg, even though he's only 18, women's basketball players have to be 22 years old during the year of the draft. So that would be in 20. They need to turn 22 this year to be draft eligible. I think that'll be up. Do we know why that is?
I don't. I assume it's part of, and this is something I wanted to talk about with all of this. I assume it's part of the collective bargaining agreement, which is going to expire this October, like October of this year, after the season, I guess during the season, or this upcoming season. So I guess after. So it is, but it is a weird rule, right? It was weird. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. The 22 seems extremely arbitrary. Not that 18 was particularly unarbitrary, but I guess technically you're an adult.
At least 18 exists in many other
in many other contexts, but it's like 22. Yeah. But what this really comes down to is money. And the NIL, we've talked about it previously on the Game Within. Like, it is making college sports profitable for these kids, and in the case of women's sports, potentially way more profitable than pro sports and pro women's basketball. And I think we pulled this up. The salary for the number one pick in the WNBA draft, who will be Paige Beckers, will be on average $87,500 a year. That is the number one pick. And I think people know this. In basketball, they have a predetermined salary based on your draft position, at least in the first round. In the NBA and I think in the WNBA as well. The number one pick.
Like if Paige Beckers had come out of law school and gotten like a decent job in like a mid-sized Midwestern city as a first-year associate, she would be making
that kind of money. Yeah, the number one pick in the Cooper Flagg, when he gets drafted this year, he'll be making $13.8 million. It looks like. So I would say that's a little bit more, more than a little bit more than Becker. So but the point is, Becker's Flage, who is a rapper, by the way, if you don't know this, Jason, like a pretty prominent rapper.
That's amazing.
She is cool. Also, I saw a bunch during the NCAA tournament of her advertising for Experian. She's a Experian spokesperson. I mean, she's going to make millions of dollars just in her endorsement deals, not to mention whatever she makes from the NIL. And so, Beckers is going to make $76,000 next year or whatever, an average of 87 over the next few years. She made $1.4 million this year on NIL. So what it really comes down to, and I talked about this up front, the collective bargaining agreement for the WNBA is in a pre-Caitlin Clark, it's in the Stone Age right now, and it just is. And there's going to be probably a work stoppage, I would guess, because they've got a lot to negotiate when you're losing potentially your biggest stars to college basketball because of the NIL rules, and you don't have a corresponding labor agreement that that compensates these athletes for what they are worth. And maybe it was true 10 years ago when they negotiated the labor agreement then, but women's sports have taken off. The WNBA has taken off. It's a different time.
The WNBA also has there's an aspect of the WNBA that it has to overcome as well that is going to hamstring its finances for a while, which is that it grew out of the NBA and that most of these franchises are affiliated with an NBA team, and they're still in this position where they're sharing, I think, like half their revenue with NBA teams, which affects, how much they're worth, but also affects how much they have on hand to spend. So that is also, I think, unique to the WNBA as well.
Indeed.
So, okay. All right. So number 3, NFL owners approved some major changes during the league meeting this year. You want to take us through these?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up here.
I'll do it.
A lot. Fouls. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, fouls.
Okay.
Overtime rules have changed. Go ahead.
All right. The on-site replay official will now be permitted to reverse. This is huge, I think. Reverse flags that are thrown for hits to defenseless players. My Missouri came out for a second there. Along with fouls for face masks, horse collar, tripping, and running into or roughing the kicker. However, and this is big, and thank goodness for this decision, those replay officials, however, will not be allowed to add a flag when an obvious foul has gone uncalled, which is interesting because, like in replay in baseball, if you see something you didn't see before, you can correct that thing, even if it wasn't part of the challenge in most cases. But it is good that it won't it's not going to.
You can't find a penalty after the fact.
So that's, what's not in there, I think, very noticeably, is pass interference. So that's still going to be, and I'm curious how you feel about that. Like, that's still going to be a thing where it's going to be totally based on what you see in real time.
It's such a common and such a critical penalty that I'm fine with it. And I would hate to see every pass interference call reviewed. It would just kill the flow of the game. I'd rather take the risk that you get a bad call than slow the game down that much. You could literally call pass interference on every play, and sometimes in some
and just be like, well, we'll look at it.
will look at it. Exactly. And that's like a terrible incentive to set. So I think it makes sense, even though it does beg the question here when you're sitting here like, wait a second, why not the most important, could be 50-yard penalty?
So here's what I think. I think that if this works, and it probably will, then that means that next season we are most certainly going to have some sort of rule about pass interference. And it's probably going to be something like it has to be like initiated by the officials, or it has to be you get like one, specifically, not just one challenge per whatever, you get like one pass interference challenge. Because, just think of how many times there have been hugely crucial pass interference calls where when you look back at it, you're like, that was definitely not pass interference.
Although it happens the other way too, right? Like I forget, it was at Rams and Saints once where like there was just like a clear run it, the quarterback ran into the guy and they didn't call it and probably flipped the NFC Championship game. Yeah. So that's both a reason to do it and a reason to be like, you know what, you just got to take the bad with the good.
Look, at the end of the day, if I'm the NFL, I look at this and go, look, I think we can get pretty fast at this. I think we could put more people in the booth reviewing this stuff as it happens to send like a pre-programmed conclusion down. For one thing, the NFL is still doing something that makes it take a long time that Major League Baseball is not. Major League Baseball now goes quite quickly on its replays. And just like with the NBA, or actually the NBA, I think still does it on the court, right?
Yes, they do on the court.
But Major League Baseball does it in New York. They have a whole separate crew of officials looking at every game, doing this at a time. The NFL is going to need to do that, I think. And then you can get it right every time.
Yeah, I honestly don't. I mean, NBA does have Secaucus and they have but the refs are usually on the court or talking to the refs in Secaucus and having a debate and discussion over this. Same in soccer. You have like the ref on the field watching something, the VAR official up front. Like, why not just have a fourth referee whose only job it is to watch the replay and make a decision? I never quite understood this, but NFL's going to have to, I think, eventually go there.
In baseball, if you watch during a replay, they'll call for the replay, they'll initiate or the challenge or whatever, and you'll see the umpire will go, and sometimes they will keep the headset on for a bit, but what you notice is they're not doing any talking. The umpire is, maybe they're answering a question or two, but they're not saying what they thought or anything like that. They're just waiting to be told whether they were right or wrong. And I think if you do that here, it would work. All right, more rule changes.
We got to talk about overtime because I'm so excited about this one.
Okay, they approved a proposal from the Philadelphia Eagles to give each team a guaranteed possession in overtime during the regular season. Previously, a team with the first possession could win in overtime if it scored a touchdown. I mean, look, I think we've been heading for this for a while, right?
It's completely asinine that this isn't the rule, or at least they have the college rules, which are everyone knows they're better rules. Like,
why do we not do the college rule? Why do we not just start at the 25-yard line?
And
just play red zone football, and for the rest of the game,
it would be super fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the reason is why, and college football recently changed their rules to this effect, is that no one wants a 7 overtime game. Sure. Like, the players certainly don't. It could be risk of injury.
Move it back 10 yards each time.
That's what I'm saying. Do something where, or force them to go to 2 very quickly, which is what I forget. Is it the 3rd overtime now in college? I think you have to start going. But
also, how about we just no field goals in overtime?
Or after the 2nd overtime, whatever it is. But the idea, I mean, the whole idea that a team, was it the Bills that lost this way to the Chiefs, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, and a few years ago, the first time that they changed this rule at all was they talked about changing the rule, or they changed the rule for the playoffs after Mahomes never touched the ball in the AFC Championship game in 2018.
And the Patriots won.
Right. And then they changed it slightly. And then it happened with the Bills, and then they changed it again slightly and I can't remember each iteration. But now let's even skip over this one about No, we'll talk about celebrations, but first, since we're talking about the Bills and Chiefs for fun, let's talk about
Robbie?
First down. He's not here, so let's do this. First down measurements. They announced the use of Sony's Hawkeye technology to measure first downs in 2025. Second rule change. This is the second rule change that follows a Bills playoff loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. The NFL changed overtime rules after the Bills lost 36.
That's right. That was the one.
There it is. Thank you, Philip. And now changing first down measurements after controversial first down call in the AFC Championship game. All right,
watch it.
Let's look at this video.
Let's watch it.
Can stop this. Here's the line. Does the ball cross that definitively?
Okay, that is clearly not a first down. From looking at it.
Do I have to play Robbie right now? No, the Hawkeye technology that they have introduced, is it going to be like chipping the ball kind of situation? I don't think.
Otherwise, what are we doing here? Right?
Yeah,
like why would we introduce any half measure? It's got to be.
It's true. It's got to be chipping the ball, and if it actually crosses the line, but the rules as they stand, and sorry to go all legal on you, I do like the standard of review that we've basically set, clear and convincing evidence, whatever it is in any sport, which is like, if it's close, tie goes to the referee who's on the field. The referee, and like, even if the referee on the field is wrong the first time by like a hair, that's fine. That's the level of error that I'm willing to live with as a sports fan to avoid like over precision. But if we have the technology to do this, like, well, okay. The problem with this in my mind is the spotting of the ball is so. I used to be an umpire. For 3 years, I was an umpire, which is the the guy who stands behind the defensive line, who spots the ball. Most of the time, spots the ball after the play.
That's interesting. What level did you do that at?
I did it at high school.
Oh my God!
In my
did you
20s,
just get berated constantly?
It was like people were pretty nice. And as you're the umpire, you're never really near the sideline. You're basically between the tackles, behind, near the linebackers most of the time, so you don't hear as much. Yeah, the linesmen like probably get it all the time. The referees obviously do too. But anyway, point is, there's no real precision in where the first down marker is. That's the thing. Is like everyone's obsessed with once the first down marker is there, like it's got to be right. It's like, have you ever seen how like imprecise the moving of the chains is? It's just two dudes like walking down, and one guy, the umpire, like literally eyeballing it and being like, okay, I'll put it here. But if we got the technology, like, might as well use it and make people feel better.
Well, especially when
make Robbie feel better.
Well, when we say it's a game of inches, get it right. Now, I will say, like, if we're gonna do this, we should just go ahead and get rid of the tush push. We've had this conversation before, but like, otherwise, we're gonna use the stupid Hawkeye thing every other possession. Like, it's just too much.
Third and one. Every third and one is just cue up the Hawkeye.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, look, here's the spot where the chip is in the ball. This is the part of the ball you got to get over like it's. I don't look forward to that. Okay, celebrations. They endorsed the competition committee's request to add additional specifics on prohibited actions that would violate the league's unsportsmanlike rules, including a throat/gesture, simulating firing or brandishing a gun, or displaying the nose wipe gesture. I don't feel like what we needed were more policing of celebrations. I guess I can, as a proper liberal, I can get on board with the idea of let's not simulate firing a gun. But I'm much more interested in the NFL being like, let's take a position on gun control than I am on like simulating. I don't know. Where are you on this?
I agree. I actually think the celebrations, it's a major difference between college football and NFL. And I remember when they changed the college football rules to be super restrictive. Basically, you could like pray and like point to the heavens and like high
you
five
can like lose
teammates,
a score.
and that's about it.
You can lose a
it's
score
really bad.
College.
But like, it's now that this, when they have the group celebrations now, when there's an interception or it's sometimes a touchdown, etc. That shit, I love that. I love it. Sure. Like, it's actually really fun. So I don't like in general the policing of it. That said, there is probably a line. I'm not sure we need to legislate specifically that the line is the nose wipe gesture or the brandishing of gun.
I think that is Yeah, I know.
I don't know what it's about.
I think I do, and this is even though I've cussed once on here, this is enough of a family show. That if it is what I think it is, it's misogynistic and sexist enough that I could see saying don't do that.
Yes, but I think this is the one where it's like, do you want just a standard, or do you want to like enumerate the
right? It feels like you're always going to be one step behind.
Yeah, exactly. So just set a standard, and like if it's a little inconsistent, clarify it through rulemaking. And I'm getting way too legalistic about it, but it's like you don't have to put this in the rule book that like you can't brandish a gun. And it's also, I was thinking about the NBA when I saw this rule too. You may have seen this week. Ja Morant's playing my beloved Golden State Warriors, and he has a history of like the gun brandishing a gun on IG Live or whatever. Apparently, did a gun shooting, not even celebration, like threatening gesture towards the Warriors bench in the game where the Warriors defeated the Grizzlies. And it's like, okay, yeah, Ja Morant, like, sorry, bro, you brandished a gun on IG Live, so maybe if you make a gun thing, it's a little less acceptable than like some random person who maybe is like, I don't know. I wouldn't want it either, but point is, letting a little bit of flexibility in the law here is probably a good thing rather than legislating it. But here we are.
This reminds me, this is a silly thing to bring up, but it just is such a funny story that I've never gotten to tell anywhere. I remember as a freshman in college playing intramural football, and we didn't have many sports in American University, so people would show up and they would like watch. It was mostly the fraternities playing against each other, so it was like always on the verge of a fight. And I remember the other team scored a touchdown on us, and the dude scored the touchdown, turned around and exposed himself to us and like grabbed it and like did all sorts of things. Like it was really obscene, and we were like in public. And I remember turning, and no, there was no penalty. And I remember turning to the referee and saying, if that is against the law, shouldn't it be against the rules? But no, it wasn't. So
maybe not.
Anyway, that's a good, I would draw the line certainly well before that. So
yeah, true. But, if it's like pornography, it's literally, it when you see it.
The final one here before we move on is, I think this is great. They're going to keep the dynamic kickoffs, but they're going to now make it the 35-yard line. I think it was the 30 this year for the 2025 season. Great, because touchbacks are boring. So they're incentivizing more running it back. Okay. Number 4, now we're getting into really fun stuff. Stephen A. Smith might have finally worn out his welcome. Let's just go to the video of Stephen A. Smith.
That he'd be happy with the things that I haven't brought up. I never brought up really and never really discussed why you were not at Kobe Bryant's memorial service. I never really brought up or discussed why you did not attend Dwayne Wade's Hall of Fame induction when that man was directly responsible for you capturing a championship for the first time in your career. I brought up none of that.
Okay, for context, this is the continuing feud between initiated by Stephen A. Smith, between Stephen A. Smith and LeBron James, and this is him going at LeBron James and saying, "I never brought up any of this stuff that he's actively bringing up."
It's a great political move, honestly. It's like, what's the whole thing about beating your wife? That's like,
I will when did you stop beating your wife?
Yeah, when did you stop? Wow, it's he's getting maybe he is getting ready for 28.
It's also been shown that LeBron was at Kobe Bryant's funeral, but like this is such a passive aggressive thing, and it is continued sort of reflective power. I mean, Stephen A. Smith is big, but obviously LeBron is a much bigger deal. So you go after him, you're going to get. And I said a few weeks ago, I was like, I think maybe I'm okay with it. You can mark me as officially off. Then maybe we should have Stephen A. Smith be the Democratic candidate for president train. What about you?
I mean, I'm not sure I was ever on it.
You were never on it. Yeah. I was I was Stephen A. curious for a minute.
Stephen A. is a master media personality. Yes. We have done this show maybe a dozen times, I don't know, 10 times, and talked about Stephen A. Smith.
That's true.
At least half of the times. Because the man knows how to get attention in the attention economy. And that's all he's doing. He's a shock jock. He's Howard Stern. He's Rush Limbaugh. Like, name your shock jock of the past. That's what he is for the new media environment. And like, God bless him.
You know,
president. He obviously should not be president,
no,
but
right.
I do think he is showing politicians that, like, something that Trump, I think, has shown politicians as well, which is like, I'm not sure any of this is going to stick to.
Insert yourself into things.
And, you know, you don't necessarily have to take as absurd a position as he has taken on some of these LeBron things, but he is making himself the story, and in doing so, building his name recognition, building his brand, and that's why he's getting $100 million from ESPN. So, like, he's just a great self-promoter. That's really what it comes down to. And should not be president, but a great self-promoter.
I just want to be clear, like, we should think about the fact, and I think I've said this before, LeBron James has been in our lives for, 22, 23 years at this point, like starting when he was like the top prospect that everybody was hearing about. And in that time, what's his largest scandal? The decision, which was just like, I'm gonna go to another team in free agency. It wasn't even a scandal. And then, which he completely righted that wrong. He went back to his hometown and won a championship, right? And then after that, like, I guess you could say that he's caught up in some of the controversy, the polarizing stuff about China and the Uyghurs and stuff that most of the NBA is caught up in. And then after that, it's what? Stephen A. Smith has to invent the idea that he didn't go to Kobe Bryant's funeral. I mean, it's literally attendance. Attendance is the biggest scandal you can get going here, right? So that ain't much. Now, with all that said, I do find it hilarious that Stephen A. apparently at one point in here said that, I mean, this is all, by the way, after the thing that first got me completely soured on Stephen A., which is attacking LeBron James as a father because you didn't like what was said, or you didn't like the way Bronny was playing. But then you add to this now that his response has been to go so far as to say that he would have he would have punched LeBron if LeBron had put his hands on him. And you know what? No, I don't think you would have.
You wouldn't have done that, bro.
Stephen A., you know, I guess I don't think he's a tiny dude. I've seen the videos of him like really boxing or whatever. LeBron James is maybe the greatest athlete the world has ever seen. He's 6'6". You would not do that. He would not.
He 100% would not do
that. No. And if you did, it would not last long. But okay, let's give LeBron the last word. What he said on the Pat McAfee show, which I thought was great. I loved this sort of subtle, muted response without leaning in too hard. This was great.
What they do on the court, that is your job, to criticize or to, be in a position where, okay, if a guy's not performing, that is all part of the game. That's all part of the game. But when you take it and you get personal with it, it's my job to not only protect my damn household, but protect the players. And I think a lot of the media, including him, and I know he's gonna be happy as hell. He's gonna be smiling from ear to ear when he hears me talking about him again. Oh my God, he's gonna get home and grab some ice cream out of the fucking freezer and sit in his chair.
And he's right. He went on to say, that Stephen A. is on his Taylor Swift tour right now. But I thought the best point that LeBron made there was, look, I don't just have to defend as a father, but like, this person plays on the team that I lead. So like, if you were to come after personally anybody on the team, like I'm gonna defend them.
Yeah, and it's smart. Right. It's also smart politics to make it bigger than Bronny, but it is bigger than Bronny. And I do think public figures in sports. It's not. I think LeBron is wrong that it's just about commenting about what's on the court, because obviously, like we talk about free agency, this whole podcast is about sort of what surrounds what happens on the court. So sports media is bigger than just what's on the court, but there's a difference between that and talking about somebody's family, talking about somebody's personal life when it doesn't affect their business life. And Stephen A., it's clear LeBron is 100% correct. it is clear that the reason why Stephen A is doing all of this is not to talk about Bronny, it's not to talk about LeBron, it's to promote Stephen A. Smith.
Right.
And to promote his First Take and ESPN. And like LeBron's probably annoyed that he's getting used for Stephen A's self-promotional purposes. Not probably. That clip made it pretty clear. And, I can't really fault you hate the game, not the player. He's a hustler extraordinaire and has made himself an entire he's a one-man brand because of it. But yeah, enough is enough. Like let the man and his son go. They're gonna be in the playoffs. Like good luck to the Lakers. I hope they lose to the Warriors.
There's more we could say about this, but look, everybody's going to lose to the Thunder is what's going to happen this year. So it's fine eventually. So all right. There's more we could say about this, but let's move on to the Dodgers here. So, okay. The world champion Dodgers visited the White House, and a lot of people were not too happy about it. So the Trump administration obviously has this anti-DEI policy that led to the Dodgers legend Jackie Robinson's military service being scrubbed, which we've talked about before from the DoD website. Mookie Betts, I think, he pretty succinctly explained this. He said, Mookie Betts, for those who don't know, plays shortstop for the Dodgers. And on Friday, he confirmed his attendance on the White House trip, and he told reporters that he was in a no-win situation that, quote, comes with the territory. Being black in America in a situation like this, it's a tough spot to be in. No matter what I choose, somebody's going to be pissed. The manager, Dave Roberts, said, coming out of it, I think we all felt really good about it. We wanted to go there to, again, recognize our 24 team. There's a lot of people in our organization that were there that have different backgrounds, different races, genders, and all that stuff, and we were all there. While during the ceremony, Trump did a couple of things. One, he talked about his relationship with George Steinbrenner and the Yankees and their successuccesses. Which, okay.
Who happened to be the team that the Dodgers beat in the World Series.
Right. So it's like, it's a little odd, but whatever. It's not surprising. And then he turned his attention to the two senators from California, Padilla and Schiff, who were not in the room, but who he said were there, but he doesn't like them, so he wasn't going to introduce them. I don't know that he's had time to decide he doesn't like Padilla, but Schiff and he anyway. But we'll just get a little taste of that video real quick.
Congratulations, Brian. And others, we have a couple of senators here. I just don't particularly like them, so I won't introduce.
Yeah, that just makes me sad because sports is supposed to be the place where we like sort of put down our weapons and we come together and that's like, why are we having teams to the White House if it's not a reason to get like the delegation there to be with and be bipartisan and have everybody like that? Just kind of makes me sad.
I've been lucky enough to go twice when the Warriors have won the title in 2016 after the 2015 title, and then last year.
You were at the one where Obama made that great comment about Steve Kerr.
I was in fact there, and in 2023 after the Warriors 2022 title.
For those who don't know, Obama got up and said that he referenced one of the greatest basketball teams ever, and everybody thought he was a member of one of the greatest teams ever, and everybody thought that he was obviously talking about the Warriors who were there, and then he talked about how Coach Kerr was a member of the Bulls.
Of the 96 Bulls, yeah. It was
awesome.
Great.
It was like the classier way to do what Trump just did with the Yankees.
Precisely. And I bring that up to say it is as ceremonial and like apolitical a thing as possible. And yes, Nancy Pelosi was there, like Barbara Lee was there, like all the people who represent the Bay Area, and they all got to invite their staff who are big fans or constituents or whatever it might be, who, just like the State of the Union where you're telling a story. Retrospectively, thinking back to the Warriors not going in 17 and 18 after they won their titles and all the things that happened in the Trump first term, I kind of regret it. I think I kind of wish that we had kept that space, like you said, apolitical. But this is the reason why. I think it's because Trump is would have been incapable, I think even more so maybe in his first term, but is totally incapable of not turning everything into a commentary on either politics or himself, or usually both. And Obama was great at it, and Biden was great at it, and Kamala was, she was there. The vice president was there, obviously, because it's her hometown team in 23. But Trump can't help himself, man, and that just it kind of taints the whole thing, like Mookie Betts said.
There is a right way to do it. Diana, we were invited. I wasn't able to go, but when the Royals won the World Series in 15, Obama had the Royals there, and Diana got to go, and she had a great time. And then I have a buddy who I won't name who used to work with the Royals, and he told me this great story about how so George Brett, who's my Royals Hall of Famer and still part of the Royals front office, so he's a Hall of Famer, and he's the only Royal in the Hall of Fame, but he was very close friends with Rush Limbaugh, who came up selling radio ads for the Royals. So he's a big Republican, but he's also like my hero. So like I just try and not have those two facts interact in my brain. And a buddy of mine told me that he described the interaction that George Brett had with Obama before they all went out on stage. And he said that, George Brett was making all these jokes about, I can't believe I got to meet Obama and all this stuff. And then Obama walks in and he's meeting everybody in the Oval Office, and he gets to George Brett, and George Brett goes to introduce himself, and Obama goes, George, you do not need to tell me who you are. I'm a White Sox fan. You used to kill us more than anybody else. We hated being in your division. I am reluctantly a huge George Brett fan. And then my buddy told me that by the end of the day, Brett was like, he's a pretty good guy. I think I like him.
He's a dude.
I like the guy.
Yeah, it is. I like your point, and it's kind of antithetical to what this podcast is all about. But like, sports is both very political and very important, and also like the one place where people put down their swords on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to like either cheer for the same team despite their political differences, or be on the same team despite their political differences.
Like
and
everyday people, not just politicians.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is like the pinnacle. It should be the going to the White House should be the pinnacle of that. Mm-hmm. And while we as Democrats and liberals should take some responsibility for not engaging with that in the first Trump term, I think we got a pretty good illustration with the Dodgers going about why that decision was made. And I just hope that this is not permanent, I think. And like the next guy or girl, whoever it is, dials it back and just like reestablishes this space. It's a great tradition. It's really cool. Like It was awesome to watch Andrew Wiggins, who's Canadian, when I was there in 23. Like he's 25 years old, whatever. I remember meeting him. The dude was in awe. Like you could just tell he was like, this is incredible. Obviously he was happy he had won the title, but like it was really cool for him. And Klay Thompson and these other guys, Steph Curry seemed like he'd been there before, right? But like,
I'm sure he had.
He in fact had.
Individually just hanging out, probably playing basketball in that court that Obama built in the basement.
Exactly. It should be a cool, apolitical, just an honor and a celebration of American culture when this happens. And I hope we can restore that.
So if you ran a team right now that won a championship and was invited to the White House, the question is, would you go?
If I were the president of the team, or would I go?
Yeah, if it was up to you.
I wouldn't go. But I would say go. Like I would have the team go and let them pick, who wanted to go and who didn't, but I wouldn't go.
It's tough, man, because when you're a part of a team, it's a different, like that's Mookie's point, right? Like if I don't go, then I didn't go support my teammates. If I do, if I do go, then people are like, you're not being like a real advocate. And so I don't know, man. I think it's hard.
Yeah, the Dodgers didn't really the Dodgers didn't put Trump on any of their social media or anything like that. Which I get it. Like have you ever been to Los Angeles? Like
right.
I'm guessing it went city of Los Angeles, certainly even the county went 60-40 for Harris, but also
that also means 40% of their fans. That's the thing is like,
true.
Are you going to represent all your fans or are you not? So I think it's tough. I think it's a really tough decision. And I think,
would you, if the Royals invited you to go after they win the World Series this year, for example, or if you were a part of the team?
Let's say I were a part of the team. My approach would be, look, whatever is going to happen is not about us. We are not endorsing, like, we are going to the White House. We're not going to Trump's White House. We're going to the White House. And then what I would do is I would probably, if it were me doing it, I would probably communicate to the White House communications folks, we are going to go. But if anything is said that is partisan in nature, we will feel the need not to disagree with it, but to publicly say that we as an organization do not take one partisan position or the other. We don't, I would just be like, please ask the president not to do anything to make us say something.
Or
which
leave.
He'd probably do it anyway.
Or protest in real time, right? You could leave
Exactly.
if he said something offensive. Or that's maybe a middle ground of.
These are also businesses. You got to be careful. You don't want to make a business decision that gets you, know, Bud Lighted or whatever. Like, you have a fiduciary duty to avoid that.
Exactly. That's why I think it was the right decision for the team to go. But any individual who wanted to opt out,
sure,
I think should have been.
I'm sure they had
allowed to, but encouraged to if they're so inclined. And maybe that's true when there's the next Democratic president, and some, we can't really
be somebody who won't go.
Yeah.
So it's too bad. It shouldn't anyway. All right, deep dive. Trump's new tariff war could spell trouble for sports fans from Little League to the major leagues. All right, we'll start with sports brands that are impacted. Shares in Nike, Adidas, and Puma dropped sharply after Vietnam was targeted with a 46% tariff rate, Cambodia with 49%, Bangladesh with 37%, and Indonesia with 32%, while Trump hiked tariffs on China by an extra 34 percentage points following the earlier 20% tariffs. Retailers may not be able to fully offset these tariffs, as countering the impact of the levies on Vietnam alone would require price increases of 10 to 12%, according to UBS analysts. So that's just the first level, right, of just like merch, basically, and uniforms and, hockey sticks and baseball bats and that kind of thing. I didn't realize, I guess, because of the Braves and who owns them, they're publicly traded. So that's down 8.4% in the last 5 days. Madison Square Garden Sports, the owners of the New York Knicks, they're down another 8.4%. Even foreign soccer teams are taking a hit. So, the tariffs are going to affect everything, including the industry of sports.
Yeah, it's expensive. You were talking about this earlier in the context of the torpedo bats. It's like, it's not easy to have a recreational sports habit in America. Not cheap, I should say. And it's not going to get cheaper with these tariffs because, a lot of these things are not manufactured here, or parts of them are not manufactured here, et cetera. And so, it feels, well, we could talk about the political and policy implications of this. I'm sure we'll get into it. But fundamentally, what it comes down to is costs are going to go up on people, on everything. Your iPhone's going to get more expensive. Your baseball bat's going to get more expensive. Your eggs are going to get more expensive. And so is your knee brace or whatever it is. And it's ultimately going, and your team, obviously, or the market knows that that's going to affect team revenue, which is going to affect the value of the team, et cetera, et cetera. And so when costs go up, things get worse for people. And that does, sports is 100% not exempted from this.
Well, we talked earlier about the way the economy is affecting people's ability to participate in sports. In 2023, only 24% of children from households earning under $25,000 regularly participated in sports, which is in stark comparison to 41% of children from households earning $100,000 or more. They regularly participate in sports. And when essential sports equipment becomes more expensive due to tariffs, families are forced to the sidelines. There's a report from BBC about sports sponsorships, which is a really interesting sort of bank shot negative from the tariffs, where John Zarafa, a sports event bid strategist, said, "I suspect some sponsors are now reassessing how they activate such deals in the U.S., given the trade barriers that have now been imposed." Point being, as he says here, why would a sponsor spend millions of he says pounds, because it's a BBC report, doing so if it's prohibitive to sell in America? Korean car manufacturer Hyundai Group, for instance, will look to take advantage of its sponsorship deal with football governing body FIFA during the Club World Cup this year and then the World Cup in 2026. But would Trump's aggressive trade policies make such businesses think again? Like, point being, if it's so cost prohibitive for me to sell my stuff in America, that I'm not going to be able to do much market share there. Why am I marketing it there?
And the downwind effects of that are immense, right? Like, I think of the Warriors Rakuten. I don't even know what they do. I think it's like a online marketplace of sorts. But like Rakuten is the named sponsor on the Warriors uniforms, and every the WNBA, because it needs the market the revenue even more. Like, most of the jersey is these, is sponsors, and a lot of, obviously, soccer is the ultimate example of this, where it's basically like an advertisement for. But why would you, if you know you're not going to be able to sell your product in America, why would you do that? And that means the revenue of your favorite team goes down. That means they can't afford players. That means player salaries go down. That means the next time you have a collective bargaining agreement, you're slicing up a smaller pie. Like, that's a pretty serious and very predictable, foreseeable consequence of a trade war. And that's true, again, that's true in sports, but it's true of everything that we're dealing with right now. The interesting thing is this sports implication is something I think that isn't being talked about at all, nor should it be, probably, at this point, given that, like, the cost of eggs, and there are bigger fish to fry. But like, it's going to be something if it hits, right? If Rakuten pulls their sponsorship of the Warriors and they have to go searching for an American company that pays a lot less, or whatever, sponsors start pulling out of major leagues, that's gonna, like, people are gonna notice when they can't sign their favorite free agents, or when ticket prices go up, or whatever it might be. And it's mass culture, right? It's gonna hit a lot of people where it hurts, not just financially, but also like culturally and psychologically.
So on the international sports side, the U.S. is going to host the World Cup in 2026 with Canada and Mexico, and then the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. European clubs are hesitant to work with partners from a country enacting measures that harm their local economies. So there will be, two opposing camps. Brands will choose sides. Trump polarizes opinions, and this will spill into brand positioning. So a recent example of this is like Tesla protests in the European Union. Like, that is going to affect, like, an American brand like that, whether it's going to, not just be patronized, but be allowed to market itself, that kind of thing. Perhaps most concerning is the potential long-term impact on TV rights. A big chunk of the income comes from broadcast rights in the U.S. So if Trump is still around when the contracts are renegotiated, a lot of people are saying it's unclear how this is going to play out. And so the clubs are weighing how these rising production costs could affect fans. And one of the ways is jerseys are going to be more expensive.
It's just simple stuff, right? They're already pretty damn expensive. Like, it's making it worse, not better. I mean, I think of two things. Obviously, we have to talk a little bit of politics around this, because it is critical. We've tried protectionism in the past in America, basically 100 years ago, and it led to or at least one of the contributing factors to the Great Depression. It's never really worked out well for any country, for obvious reasons. Like, sure, you can get it. I think Zimbabwe folded or something recently because they depend. It's the poorest, one of the poorest countries in the world, and it's like, okay, we need the United States, but like, is Canada, are the EU gonna just fold? Like, no, they're not. They're gonna respond in kind. And my big question is, what is going to trigger the out on this? Is it going to be, are we going to end up in a place where sponsors are pulling their sponsorship of teams and or players deals, or is something going to happen in the interim that actually gets this, de-escalates this war? Because the only thing I can see is the president has to change his mind, or there has to be a mass feeling of that this is making things worse, which is already developing, to be clear. But it might actually take sports or something that is like a monoculture thing to be the thing to drive change here. Or it might just be that we're headed towards, if this continues for 2, 3, 4 years, like, we're headed to a super recession, and that's all we've got.
I guess the White House would argue that that the other option is that this causes, American manufacturing to come up and replace all of these sports goods. And I just do not think we are positioned to do that. So I do not think that's going to happen. And this isn't, I mean, the sports, we bring it up because it's just an example of how this is going to cut across the entire culture. And, my son is 11 years old and like he understands a bit about politics. We'll talk about big things in the news and, we'll talk about the election and, and he understands that dad used to be in politics and all that. But it's really, really rare that there's an issue that gets my son like angry or really passionate because he's 11 years old and like, he's like most 11-year-old boys. He wants to play baseball and basketball, and then he wants to come home and play some Fortnite. You know what I mean? Like that's what he wants, and that's what he wants to do. Go, outside on his skateboard. And we were. He's also at the same time though. He's got a little like business he's started, and he's saving money because he wants his own computer because he wants to be able to. I guess Fortnite and Call of Duty, like I guess it's better on a PC. So he's been saving money to try and get a computer, and we told him, if he worked really hard, we'd pay for half of it. So so we were talking about tariffs last night, and I was saying, basically anything that comes from these other countries, the price is going to go up. And he's like, "What?" And this was like after a baseball game. He was sitting there, he was tired, and I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Dad, I'm saying most of these computer parts they come from like China and Taiwan." He's like, now it's going to add like $150 to me trying to get this thing. That's like weeks of work. And I was like, yeah. He's like, damn it. And he's like, why didn't people vote for Kamala? Like he's so upset. And I feel like that might be a little microcosm of what's going to happen in this country.
I 100% think that's possible. And I think it does take hitting somebody where it hurts in this world. Like we're much more individualist than collectivist, I think, in this culture that we've got right now. And where it hurts is your pocketbook, but I think it hurts in the culture, right? And if you can't enjoy the things you enjoy because it's too expensive or because it's less enjoyable because of these tariffs, then you'll be pissed off. So yeah, that's like, I bet you that's happening all across. If it hasn't happened yet, a couple months from now, as these things set in, that exact conversation is going to take hold across America with, parents sitting across the kitchen table from each other, kids talking to their parents, people sitting down trying to figure out how they're going to get what they've been promised, et cetera. And it's a shame. And it's just so interesting that like it has such a deep effect on every piece of our economy, every piece of our culture, including the one that, is supposed to be unifying for us, which is sports.
Well, we'll know that it had a huge effect when the Toronto Blue Jays win the World Series 2 years in a row, and the Raptors win the finals 2 years in a row, and then the Canadiens or the Senators or whatever finally are winning. That's
Toronto might hold all the major titles,
right?
All the major sports here soon because they're the only ones who can afford players.
Could be what happens. All right, folks. Thanks for listening. Please leave a 5-star review. Please share this with your friends so other people can find out about it. I think Ravi will be back with us next week. So we probably won't talk about the Bills and the first down thing next week. But thanks for listening. Sports really do matter quite a lot.